John.
Thanks very much, Chair. Now, I understand that the assumptions that underpin the NDIS financial sustainability framework are not currently in the public domain, correct?
No, I don't think so, Senator.
So they're not, or you don't think
I don't think they are.
Well, is your department aware of the assumptions that underpin the projections? Does DSS know?
Yes, sir.
So the department does. The department does understand does have a record of, has been informed of the assumptions.
And I've previously given evidence on this. I think either last estimates or 2 estimates ago.
Yeah. So what we've spoken about a couple of estimates ago was what you did or didn't provide to the National Cabinet for that decision-making process. To clarify, that's not the question I'm asking.
So the point I made is that we were made aware of. Yeah. We were made aware of it during the finalisation of that process for National Cabinet.
Yes. So that was the decision that was made in July around the Sustainability Framework Agreement at the National Cabinet level, and I understand that is the subject of the government's PII claim and all the rest of it. I'm asking you, as we sit here now, you're the department, you're the agency head, you are subject to a target. Are the assumptions that are underpinning the target that you are subject to at the moment in the public domain now or not?
No, they're not, and I think Ms Falkingham comprehensively covered the view of the agency, and the agency is obviously much closer to issues of achievability because they deal with it on a day-to-day basis, and I think she covered it earlier.
So, Senator Steele-John, if I may, so what we have outlined is how we intend to achieve the 8%. So I think you're going to those.
That'll be a line of questioning for a different time. My question to you both is simply to confirm that you do, but if I understand correctly, you know the assumptions that underpin this framework, Mr Griggs, as Secretary of the Department. Have you been made aware of them, Ms Falkingham?
Senator Steele-John, we have met with our colleagues in the central agencies quite a number of times. So what I can tell you, though, is our scheme actuary obviously has provided the modelling that went to the government's budget investment and what we thought that would do to the projections longer term. That's what we are aware of and that's what we're working towards.
Yeah, but not what Mr Griggs is aware of, because Mr Griggs is aware of the assumptions that underpinned the agreement, the information provided to National Cabinet, which you've decided not to, you've stated you will not disclose over a number of different hearings, but you are aware of what assumptions underpin.
Well, I'm pretty much aware of what Ms Falkingham's aware of.
So yes, you are aware of the assumptions that underpin the sustainability framework.
As described by Ms Falkingham, yes.
Yeah, so you're aware of it, but what you are stating here today is that those figures are not currently in the public domain.
That's correct.
So you know it, but the public doesn't. The Australian community don't. The 610,000 participants are not aware of the assumptions that underpinned the agreement between the states and territories to adopt a 8% figure for the agency.
And I've made the point that the government has made a decision about a PII claim, and I'm not sure what more I can say, Senator.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know what. In some ways, I don't know what more needs being said. To be honest, I mean, we have a situation now where this Senate has attempted, in reasonably good faith, to extract from the government the basis of the financial sustainability report. The government in the public realm has communicated some $79 billion worth of savings on the back of a combination of this sustainability framework and other measures, and all disabled people want to know is what does that mean for them in terms of the number of NDIS participants the government projects will be on the scheme in 2025-26, and yet you refuse to provide that information.
Government's made a decision.
And you wonder why people don't trust you. You wonder why there is a growing level, and this is more for the minister than from the bureaucrats at the table. You wonder why there is a growing level of distrust in this government and its commitment to authentic co-design when you cannot simply detail to the disability community how many disabled people you project will need to be kicked off the NDIS to meet your growth target for the agency. It really is one of the most outrageous betrayals of trust in the sad, sad history of this Parliament. But I will circle back to that later. I want to move now to the independent review, which was so seriously undermined in its independence by the adoption of the sustainability framework halfway through the commission of the review. Now it has been given to the government and released. Can you, Minister, inform the committee as to when the government intends to respond formally to the review?
I'll follow that up, Senator Steele-John, and come back to you with a response to that.
Sorry?
I'll follow that up and come back to you with a response to that question.
As to when the government intends to respond? Will you do that during the course of the afternoon, please?
Attempt to, yes.
Thank you very much. I would have expected that to be on your cue cards for this afternoon. All right, I'll go to a new access process which has been implemented by the agency, I believe. The agency has implemented, effective of 30th of October, a new process whereby applicants are required to complete a community connection plan prior to submitting their access request. Correct?
Thanks, Senator Steele-John. We will defer this one to Deputy CEO Corey McKenzie.
Senator Steele-John, Corey McKenzie, Deputy CEO for Service Design and Improvement at the agency. Senator, we haven't changed any policy settings around access. I understand there have been some instances in Western Australia, particularly where some of our partners in the community have erroneously advised potential participants about the requirement to do a community connections plan. That's not a requirement. Certainly, of course, people seeking access to the scheme can seek to do a community connections plan, but it's not an obligation and it's not a change to our access process.
Okay, so just to be clear, you have been informed that some of the partners in community in Western Australia have erroneously informed participants that there is in fact a new access process when no such process exists.
That's right. There's been no change to the process and it's not an obligation to do a community connections plan. We've been aware of some instances, so we'll just clarify that and make sure that's very clear with all of our partners too.
Yeah, okay. So what is your understanding of how the community connections program functions? The plan. What is your stated purpose for this process?
Well, so a community connections plan reflects the role of local area coordinators and our partners in the community, which again is a core feature of the design of the scheme, and it's really about understanding and supporting participants to access supports that exist outside the scheme, outside individual formal supports, but that exist in their community. So really consistent with, in the event that a person meets access and becomes a participant, is something that is complementary to their supports provided through the scheme itself. Okay,
so it is envisaged that the participant would engage in this process prior to an access application?
It's not a requirement at all. They may choose to do that. As you know, Senator, an access process. There is a process associated with seeking access to the scheme, with making an access request to the scheme, and the intention of community connections plans and of having a conversation about community connections as early as possible is that there's an opportunity to work with participants to support them in connecting into their local communities and connecting into services that are otherwise available outside the scheme as their access request progresses, and something that ultimately would complement a plan under the scheme if they do get access.
Okay, so it's quite concerning, because what I have been told by the community is that they have had it reported to them by LACs and others that they are unable to apply for access to the scheme before they have completed this community access plan. So you're telling me that is not the case?
Not a requirement, no.
And
so, as I say, we'll make sure that we're clarifying that with all of our partners so that that's not a concern.
And you currently are aware of that occurring in Western Australia?
I am. A particular advocate has personally raised it with me, which is why I'm aware of those circumstances. That is the only instance. It's the only circumstance I'm aware of, which isn't to say that it doesn't happen elsewhere. But either way, we are making sure that we're working with all of our partners in the community that that access process is really clear, and that while community connections plans I think are really important and play a really important role and will continue to do so as part of the scheme, it's not a requirement prior to seeking access to the scheme to complete a community connections plan.
Well, I've been informed that it is also something that people are experiencing in Victoria as well. So
we will take it on notice that we will put out communications to all of our partners in terms of it is not a requirement for access, and just remind people how the access process works. So as you know, those plans have been in place for a long time in terms of the ability for people to participate in those if they would like. There's been no change at all from the agency. So we will try and understand kind of why that was happening in those instances, and very happy if you want to provide me the Victorian details, because we'll follow it up. But I think it's a good call out, and we will get out communications to all of our partners.
What work have you?
After this one, thank you.
What work have you done to identify exactly how the partners in community ended up with the impression that you were not able to apply for the NDIS until you'd gone through this process?
So there has been a number of access issues that we've been made aware of, where the access process hasn't been working for people seeking access to the scheme, particularly for children and their families. And so we have been undertaking over the last particularly probably a couple of months now, quite a detailed root cause analysis of understanding some component parts to that. Certainly the issue that you've raised around community connection plans and a misconception that that's a requirement prior to access is one component of that. But also we've just been wanting to understand across that experience what the kind of causes might be. As you're aware, we the 30th of October was the commencement date for the national expansion of our new computer system, PACE. And so there is a significant, I don't want to underestimate the significance of the change process that's happened around that. And so partners and our staff and participants and providers are learning to transition into this new system, and that's a significant change process. And I suspect I think the misconception has arisen as a result of those change pieces. One of the things that we're in a hypercare period still at the moment, and will be for some time, but one of the things that we're doing in that is really trying to understand what's happened, and we'll continue to improve communications, improve change resources, make sure that we're simplifying things where we can in terms of advice and guidance to staff and our partners particularly, but addressing issues in the system if they're occurring as well. So it's an ongoing process of really continually improving that experience.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Senator Steele-John. I'm passing back to the Coalition.